Welcome in, everyone. Today we're diving deep into the story of Chris Kaba.
A young black man killed by London police.
Yeah, it's a case that brings up so many issues. Race, policing, justice. We've got court documents, personal accounts, news articles, trying to get the full picture here.
There's the connection to those bigger issues, right, that makes it so powerful.
For sure. And that's what we're here to dig into. But first, who is Chris Kaba? The sources we've got really paint a picture of him.
They do. 24 years old. His family and friends, they talk about him being so talented.
Oh, really?
A musician, actually, a rapper.
Yeah.
Really into his music. Some even thought, rising star kind of potential.
A rising star, huh? And he was going to be a father, too. Just makes you think. All the things that got cut short.
Absolutely. It's that contrast between his potential and how his life ended. That's what sticks with you through the whole thing.
Right. So to understand what happened, gotta go back to that night, September 5th, 2022. Streatham, South London. Chris is driving, and the police start chasing him.
And why they chased him is key here. Automatic number plate thing flagged his car. Possible link to a firearms incident the day before.
So they thought his car might be connected to something dangerous. But it gets complicated. No evidence Chris himself was involved in any crime.
Right. And just to be super clear, no evidence he even had a firearm at the time.
So, young guy, soon-to-be dad, driving a car that maybe was linked to something, but wasn't known to the police. Which leads to the huge question. How does this end in a fatal shooting?
That's what everyone wants to know. They try to stop his car, and one officer fires a single shot through the windshield.
And that shot, that took his life. Can't imagine what was going through people's minds at that moment.
Total chaos.
Yeah.
Fear, obviously. And then the tragedy that comes after. It wasn't just contained to that street, Chris Kaba's death. It became news everywhere. Protests all over London.
People demanding justice for Chris Kaba, answers, accountability. But there was something more to it, right? This, deeper anger. What was driving that?
I think this incident, it brought up years of frustration, mistrust, especially in the black community in London. The Met Police, they've got a history.
Yeah, not a great one. I'm thinking Stephen Lawrence back in '93. That really put the spotlight on racial bias in the Met.
Exactly. And it hasn't stopped. More incidents, more eroded trust. So when Chris, unarmed, is killed by an officer, it felt like we'd been here before.
History repeating. For a lot of people, this wasn't just about this one event. It was about a whole system, they felt, working against them.
Yeah, you see that a lot in what we've read. One quote, it's a community leader saying, this isn't isolated. This is deep-rooted racism in the Met. Strong words.
Powerful stuff. So with that history and the public outcry, this investigation was under a microscope. What happened there?
The IOPC, that's the Independent Office for Police Conduct, they took over. They're separate from the police, right? Their job is to figure out, was that deadly force justified?
So like a watchdog, making sure the police are held to account.
Yeah, good way to put it. And in this case, they did their whole investigation, passed it on to the Crown Prosecution Service, the CPS.
They decide if there'll be charges, right? In England and Wales. So what they say?
Big decision. They charged the officer involved with murder.
Murder? That's almost unheard of for UK police. What was the reaction?
Shockwaves, honestly. Through the force, through the country. This was a potential turning point, for how these shootings are handled.
You mentioned some officers had supported their colleague. What about when the murder charge came down?
Mixed bag. Some felt it was unfair, said it'd make their jobs harder, more dangerous. Some even turned in their firearms authorization temporarily to protest.
Wow. Basically saying, we don't feel safe or supported doing this job.
Exactly. But you also had some who said, yeah, accountability is needed. They saw this case as a wake-up call for the Met.
Seems like it exposed a real split within the police themselves. But looking beyond that, did this case spark wider conversations about policing itself?
Oh, absolutely. Chris Kaba's case, it became this focal point. Race, policing, justice, all of it forced people to confront some tough truths, about bias in the force, about deadly force used against black people.
Like bringing those issues front and center.
Right, and this wasn't happening on its own. We had the Black Lives Matter movement, huge momentum after George Floyd in the U.S.
So this was part of a bigger global picture about racial justice.
Exactly, and it pushed people to demand reform, in Scotland Yard specifically. Stricter rules against racial profiling, better training so officers learn to de-escalate situations.
So instead of reacting after these tragedies, trying to prevent them.
Yeah, that's the goal, changing the culture of policing, understanding communities better, de-escalation as the priority.
Big task. But it does feel like there's this push for change both within the force and society overall. This case started a conversation we can't let die down.
I agree. And as we keep digging into this, I hope you, listening, will take it further too. Talk to people. Engage with these issues. Learn more.
Cause justice for Chris Kaba, it's bigger than just this case. It's about a world where everyone's life matters, where everyone feels safe, and where this kind of thing stops happening.
That's the goal, isn't it? A world worth working toward.
It really makes you think, this whole thing, I keep going back to Chris being about to be a dad. It hits differently.
It does. Shows the scale of the loss.
Mm-hmm.
A whole new chapter, just beginning, and then it's gone.
So much emotion around it all, the grief, the anger, people wanting justice, but also this hope that things will change. Do you think from what we've read, this case could actually make a difference? Like, bring about the reforms people are demanding?
Tough to say for sure, but it could be a catalyst. I mean, charging a police officer with murder. That's not happened before, at least not like this.
True, that's huge. But even if there's a trial, a conviction, that's only one piece. What else needs to happen to make real change in the force, in society?
The sources point to a few key areas. Stopping racial profiling, that's a big one. A lot of people see that as the root of why Black people are targeted so much by police.
Okay, but how do we go from talking about it to actually doing something? What could that look like?
Stricter rules for police, searches, more oversight. Like, officers have to document why they stopped someone, and it better be for a good reason, not just because of their race.
So more accountability, making sure it's not just happening because of how someone looks.
Right. And along with that, training. Better training, specifically on how to de-escalate situations.
Giving officers tools to handle things without using force, you mean?
Exactly. Learning to resolve conflict, understanding different cultures, recognizing their own biases, even if they're not aware of them. That stuff could prevent a lot of these awful encounters.
Instead of always reacting after the fact, trying to head it off.
Exactly. It's got to be a cultural shift. Within the police, how they view their relationship with the communities they serve. De-escalation, first and foremost.
That's a big change, but it seems like people are pushing for it, both within the police and outside of it. We can't let this conversation die down.
Agreed. This deep dive's ending, but for everyone listening, I hope this is just the start for you. Keep talking about it, learning, taking action. That's how we honor Chris Kababa's memory.
Because it's about so much more than this one case, isn't it? It's about everyone feeling safe, everyone's life being valued, and making sure a tragedy like this never happens again.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
That's what we should all be striving for.